the August 22nd, 2019 meeting of the West Haymarket Joint Public Agency. My name is Tim Clare with the University of Nebraska. I am the Vice Chair of the board. On my immediate left is Mayor Larry N. Gaylor Baird, a member of the Joint Public Agency, and excuse me just a minute. And then Tammy Ward, representing the City Council on the Joint Public Agency. The open meetings laws are posted by the door. We do allow for public comment, and there is a time limit notification for public comment limited to 5 minutes to speak on specific items that are on today's agenda. Those testifying would need to identify themselves for the record and write their names. The first order of business that comes before our board today is the election of officers for the board. And so I would open it up for nominations for chair.
I would nominate Mayor Larry N. Gaylor Baird as chair.
I'll second. Do we have public comment on that, or do we just go straight into election? Excuse me. We'll go straight into election. All in favor of, I guess call the roll on the officer election then.
Ward?
Yes.
Clare?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes. Thanks.
And then election for vice chair to the board.
Can I get a nomination for vice chair?
I would nominate Tim Clare as vice chair.
I'll second that. Can you please call the roll on the election of Tim Clare as vice chair?
Ward?
Yes.
Clare?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes. And then could I please entertain a motion for secretary?
I nominate Tammy Ward.
I second. Any further discussion? If not, then please call the roll on the election of Tammy Ward as secretary.
Ward?
Yes.
Clare?
Yes.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes. Okay. For our order of business, the clerk will read each item on the agenda and staff will then come forward to make a presentation. We'll take public comment, and if speakers could please state their names and addresses for the record. And again, the testimony is limited to 5 minutes per item. And if you could please call the first item, Casey.
Item number 4, approval of the minutes from the JPA meeting held July 25th, 2019.
I move the adoption of the minutes.
I'll second them because I was present at that meeting. Any comment on the minutes? All right, please call the roll.
Ward?
Yes.
Clare?
I'm going to abstain as I was not present at the meeting.
Gaylor Baird?
Yes. Okay, next up on our agenda, Casey, could you please read the item?
Item number 5, approval of July 2019 payment register and review of the July 2019 expenditure reports.
Hi, good afternoon. Brandon Kaufman, Treasurer for the West Haymarket JPA. Before you have the July 2019 payment register, a June total of $1,027,268.91 in operating expenditures. We'll go over some of those highlights of that. We had men's basketball ticket purchases from UNL in the amount of $195,520. We had 2 months of parking management that we paid out to the city for management of the garages of $278,394.67. We had various types of arena maintenance for food repair, beverage, and equipment maintenance in the amount of $27,327.82. Women's basketball tickets for the upcoming season, $90,015. We had a payment to the DEC for energy costs for the JPA area of $215,412.63, of which 31% is paid by the JPA, about $66,000, and then about 69% is paid by customers. So we'll get about $149,000 of that back. And then we also had the pre-opening loan payment to SMG of $201,900. That was a 10-year loan that was taken out. And those are kind of the highlights of the operating budget payments. All of the payments are in the current payment register. In addition to in your financial reports, there's a statement of revenues, expenditures, and fund balances for the West Haymarket. As you can see, included in that, there's been revenues of $29.3 million, expenditures of $26.3 million, for a surplus of $2.9 million, with an ending balance of $42.3 million. The Pinnacle Bank Arena also included an income statement ending June 30th, revenues of $5.2 million, expenditures of $4.5 million, for a surplus of $708,000. That gives them an ending balance of retained earnings of $933,000. As of 7/31, occupation taxes are up 3.68%, and that's ahead of the original projections by 25%, so that corresponds with the year 2030. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Procedurally, all bills paid, the processes were followed on obtaining signatures and whatnot for the checks. Where does this put us? You said our revenue in the occupation tax, and or is at where we expected it to be in 2030.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a big payment coming due in 2020 and another bigger one coming due in 2021. The balances that we have today, how are we going to be able to make those? Will we be able to make those payments, and do the numbers justify the fact that the debt payment will be satisfied?
That's a great question, and I've actually got some information in the budget portion of the presentation that'll cover all that. So if I can hold off answering that until I get to the budget, I think I'll cover all of that.
Don't let me forget that I asked that question.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, if there's anyone who'd like to testify on this item, please come forward.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. Was the question about repaying I couldn't hear Mr. Clare. Was the question about the repayment?
The payment on the bonds.
Bonds, yeah, okay. I will wait on that question then. So I noticed that there's two, let's see, the SMG payment is the loan, the repayment of the loan, $200,000.
Yes, that was a payment for the 10-year loan of like $2 million that was taken out for the pre-opening.
So what's the balance then?
I believe there's about $800,000 in principal that's left.
800, okay, so this is the first payment about that?
No, we've been paying it for a number of consecutive years now.
Oh, okay. So, and the district energy is the gross, and then you have reimbursement from the other tenants?
We pay, the gross amount for DEC, and then we bill that back to the customers in the JPA area.
And was that?
It was about 31% is paid by the JPA, and then about 69% is paid back by customers.
Okay.
So we get about $149,000 back from customers.
49,000?
149,000. Yeah.
Okay. Have you added any new tenants at this time?
We don't have any tenants space to
Well,
add.
no, I mean, who are helping to pay for that bill?
Oh,
You
no.
gave me a list several months ago.
The last one that came on was Lumberworks. The next one that'll come on once they're done with the building is Olson Phase 2. And I'm not sure when that'll come online.
Okay. And you're still picking up arena bills?
We continue to have equipment and maintenance charges at the arena.
And you told me you would be continuing to do that, so I guess we have doubts that the arena is paying for itself.
I guess I don't have a doubt, and there's more information I'll present on the budget here pretty quick, but the arena continues to generate revenues above and beyond its expenditures.
Why are we paying it bills then?
Because the JPA receives a portion of the money. I have a chart I'll go into here pretty quick with the budget that'll kind of make it clear as to the splits in the revenues.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions or testimony on this item? All right, seeing none, no actions required on this. Could you call the next item?
Don't we have to,
Yeah.
the payment register?
Oh, sorry, I see a note that said no action. Is that not right? You want us to call
That's
a
on the
vote on the
expenditure
payment
report.
register?
Yes,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
thank you.
Could I get a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Any further discussion on the payment register? All right, please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes. Please call item number 6.
Item number 6 is WH 1923, resolution to approve the letter agreement to engage BKD to perform an audit of the West Haymarket JPA financial statements in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards for the year ended August 31st, 2019.
So this is a resolution to approve BKD as our independent outside auditor. We do this on an annual basis as required by state law. BKD, we have a contract that was just approved through the city council for another 4-year extension of that contract. So the JPA parodies they piggyback off of the city contract, because in the end we have to incorporate, on the city side, we have to take all of the JPA's financials and then incorporate those into the city financials. And that's a requirement of Governmental Standards Board. So we take all that and incorporate it in. That contract was extended, so we would use BKD for another 4-year period, and then we would go out once again for a request for proposals to look at hiring another auditor after that 4-year period's over. So this is the letter for 2019, the end of our fiscal year on the 31st.
Okay, any questions?
Your experience with them in prior years and how they work, what was their work quality? Is it a reputable firm?
Yeah, BKD is a very reputable firm. We've had great experience working with them so far. You know, the one thing that helps us is their continuity of staff. We're not seeing a lot of turnover. When you have turnovers on auditors, you're teaching them about, you know, the financials and the system as they're going through and auditing. So it helps to have that continuity, and they've got great staff to work with.
Thank you. Would anyone like to speak to this item?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. Was this bid out under the purchasing department?
So 4 years ago, there was a process that the city went through that included, I believe, a council member at the time, and that was put out for requests for proposals. So it's not a straight bid per the numbers, but they look at the qualifications and experience, the pricing. So it's more of an all-encompassing. BKD was the recommended auditing firm to select at that time, and included in that was for a 4-year period that was approved by the city council. And then there was an option to extend for another 4-year period. That extension was just approved by the city council, I believe, 2 weeks ago.
But there was not a formal bid that was under the purchasing department?
There was a formal process. It was a request for proposal that went out. So it was a competitive process.
Okay. I looked back into June. When exactly was that sent out?
I could go back and find the council resolution that was approved back 4 years ago, if you'd like me to.
Yeah, because there's supposed to be a formal way of bidding.
Yes, and all that occurred.
Under LB 73-101, there is a procedure for formal bidding.
All
There
process.
was an RFP put out, and that followed the procedures, and then there's an option, a 4-year option to renew in the contract that was bid in the RFP process. That's what we're doing right now, is approving essentially the exercise of the option, correct?
So the city council approved the exercise of that option to move forward. So this is the engagement letter for BKD to move forward and audit our financials for August 31st, 2019.
Right.
We've followed the competitive process to select a firm. In addition, it's a professional service contract. That process did not have to go out on an RFP, but it was done that way to select a firm. So, and that's in line with the best practices with Government Finance Officers Association.
And like you stated, any multi-year contract has to go before the city council for approval, so that has already happened in this case, and we're just taking action after that.
Yes, Mayor, that has happened. In addition, government finance officers recommend a minimum of a 5-year contract. So we can't do any more than a 4-year contract based off rules, the city's rules. So we did a 4-year with another option to extend for another 4. Yeah.
Did you have a 4-year contract before?
I believe that is the case.
Okay. So, I guess I don't have an answer about the day upon which bids are made and their return. According to 73-101.
Ms. Kinsey, I can get you that information, the approval dates through council, the resolution, when it was put out for our RFP as well.
Okay. Well, we would be opposed to this till we get that notification and that it follows LB 73-101 procedures, because it does mention joint public agencies, rules for making bids.
Thank you.
And it also says that any amount over $25,000, the mayor is to give 30 days notice to the public at large. And that is LB 73-204. And has that been done?
I don't have an answer to that question right now, and your time is up, but we could have Chris Connolly come and respond if you don't mind having a seat.
Chris Connolly, Chief Assistant City Attorney. 73-101 is a state statute that covers bidding in general, but it's really for products and construction services and those kinds of things. And it does call for a competitive process, which is what we've done, but we are not required to do a bidding process as such for professional services like we have here. Those can be handled in a different manner, such as an RFP, and so that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. Who made that decision that you don't have to follow 73-101?
We do comply with 73-101 because it's not it's not the kind of product that needs to be bid through that statute.
where bid for supplies or work of any character whatsoever.
Right, work in this case is not auditing, that's a professional service. The kind of work they're talking about there is building buildings, putting in infrastructure, those kinds of things.
I think we need an opinion from the Attorney General.
Well, we're not in a position to ask for that.
Okay, then watchdogs will ask for it. Or use some other means, because that isn't the way that this is related, and not only that, but the state law supersedes city law.
Yeah, I guess we'll agree to disagree on that, but.
Okay.
Okay, so if there's no further testimony on this item, any other further discussion?
Move approval.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Item number 7, WH 1924, resolution approving the proposed operating budget for the West Haymarket JPA for September 1st, 2019 to August 31st, 2020.
All right, so you get me for every item.
Lucky us.
Yeah. We're here today to present the 2019-2020 operating budget. Our fiscal year is in line with the city fiscal year, which starts on September 1st and ends August 31st. So before we get into the kind of guts of the budget, I really just wanted to remind everyone of the different flows of revenue and the relationship between the JPA and the Pinnacle Bank Arena. So the Pinnacle Bank Arena generates about $9 million a year. Of that, $3.5 million stays with the arena. And that's, their direct event income, ancillary income, and then other event income. The other portion comes to the West Haymarket JPA. And I'd say that originally was set up that way to ensure bond coverage ratios were in place. And I think it also gives this board a little bit more control of the finances of the PBA, because you're sending them back allocations of money. So $5.5 million of that arena revenue comes over to the JPA. That includes $2.4 million for the premium seating, $1.1 million for the IMG scholarship or sponsorship money, about $400,000 for UNL rent, and about $1.6 million associated with parking for events. So in total, the black bar at the top on the left-hand side, you can see the total JPA budget is $34.8 million for revenue. The non-arena revenues account for $29.3 million, with the biggest of that being occupation taxes of $18 million. So that those revenues support the expenditures of the JPA of $29.6 million, of which the largest is debt at $16.8. And then this board on an annual basis has approved the transfer of funds back to the Pinnacle Bank Arena of $1.8 million. And that is the IMG funds that comes from the advertising at the arena. That's $1.1 million, or about 1.2. And then the $600,000 operating increment that's also sent back. And that's been proposed at a flat level. That's been flat for a number of years. So kind of in total, arena revenues of about $9 million, operating expenditures for the arena 5.6. So kind of an over-under of $3.4 million. And it's rather complex the way this was set up, but it was done to ensure that the JPA would get the majority of the revenues, so that when it came time for making debt payments on the principal, that we would be ensured that we have enough funds to do that. And we have enough funds to date, and we'll continue to in the future, and I'll touch on that here pretty quick. So in total, the West Haymarket budgeted revenue is $35 million, expenditures $30 million, for a surplus of $5 million that we're estimating for this year. You can see, and some of these are rounding, so like on the previous slide. So total $34.79 million. That's a 12% increase over the 18-19 budget. Basically, our core revenues that are coming into the JPA, we have occupation taxes, intergovernmental revenue. That's the $3.7 million that we receive on an annual basis from the federal government for the Build America bonds, which were $200 million. We issued those as taxable bonds, and then because we issued them as taxable, the federal government sends back a subsidy, and that brought the total cost below what it would have been to issue tax-exempt bonds at the time. So it was a cheaper way to issue bonds post-recession. Rental income.
Our blended rate on the bonds.
What's that?
Our blended rate on the bonds.
Blended rates.
With the repayment back from the feds, we budgeted 5, and our blended rate was like just under 4, wasn't it?
I believe our blended rate's about 3.7%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3.75.
Yeah.
Rental income, we also receive, which talk about is $2.4 million from premium seat revenues that are generated by the arena but come to the JPA. And then another pretty large figure within the revenue side is the sale of land. So we have 3 different sales. We have land on Block 4 that's being sold, land on Block 5 that's being sold, and then we also have the installment payments from Block 2 that was sold to WRK. So we're in the second year of that installment payment. So this slide just shows you occupation taxes. As of 18-19, we're estimating a 3.5% growth. So we're over our budgetary figures by about $370,000. So the increase from the budget of 18-19 to 19-20 is a little bit more than what we say our 2% increase is, because we're doing a 2% off of what we believe we're going to collect for 18-19 and not off of the budgetary figure. In our long-term forecast model, we always project 2% for our occupation tax growth. Expenditure budget is $29.59 million. That's a 2.4% increase over the 2018-19 budget. You can see, based off the various categories here, debt service, about $16.8 million is 57% of that budget. Capital equipment, $2.6 million, or about 8%. Other services and charges, $10.3 million, 35%, and then we have about $3,000 in there for materials and supplies for postage and things like that. Some of the highlights. So under other services and charges, miscellaneous contractual services, one thing that's come up in the past is the city staff reimbursement. So I just wanted to highlight that real quick. The city staff reimbursement is a 1.9% increase over the prior year. What happened is we actually went through and I think the attorneys were tracking their time. We went through and looked at all the finance charges as well. And from 17-18 to the 18-19 budget, that allocation for staff time dropped about $48,000. So this year, the city sets a 2-year budget. So that meets the city's budgetary expectations for the second year. As we come up on the upcoming biennium, we'll continue to take a look at that allocation and see whether it's fair to the JPA and the city. Management services, we just talked about the pre-opening loan. One thing that the board has indicated before is the repayment of debt. And so we're proposing that we pay off the pre-opening loan early. That's 4 years early. That'll be $800,300, and that's going to save us about $3,800 in interest charges. It's not a lot in interest because the original loan was like a 0.19% interest rate over 10 years. I mentioned earlier that
It cleans up the balance sheet a little bit.
yes. Yeah. The operating increment is flat at $600,000. It also included is transfer of funds of $500,000 to the Parks Foundation, and that's based off of the redevelopment agreements this board approved, I believe in April meeting for the development of parkland down there. Some highlights of the capital improvement program. We have $236,000 for video board controls. Basically, the current version that we have is beginning to become obsolete. So the arena was starting to have problems with production issues, so they're recommending the replacement of that. There's $123,752 included for the basketball floor. So this board's already approved that contract, and that is payment upon delivery, so we're just carrying over that item. There's $850,000 for LED lighting for the Arena Bowl. So when they originally looked at this when building the arena, but at the time the technology wasn't adequate and LEDs were still fairly costly. We believe we're at a point where the costs have come down, the technology's a lot better. So this would replace all the lighting fixtures in the bowl to LEDs and then also replace the video controls. This will help to alleviate some potential issues that we have during power outages and bringing the lights back on. It'll enhance the lighting and also save some energy costs. There's $825,000 for streetscape funds, and that's based on the redevelopment agreements for Block 4 and also Block 3 Olson Phase 2 development. And then there's $97,200 for Block 5 stormwater charges. That's it, based on the Block 5 development agreement. Debt service is at $16.8 million. And just a reminder, over the next 2 years, the debt payments are going to increase about $4.8 million in 2021, and then another $2.9 million in 2021-22. So that's about a $7.7 million increase over the next 2 years. So this chart shows kind of the projected long-term cash flows of the JPA. You can see anything above the line is surplus, below the line is deficit. Some of those larger deficits you see, we have a long-term capital improvement program, and that includes, major replacements of like video board or the retractable seating. So those are major capital improvements that are driving those deficits in those years. As we notch up the bond payments, though, it does squeeze the JPA finances a little bit, but that was how it was initially planned, that the principal payments would be delayed. That would allow occupation taxes to build up, and then also build up our reserve funds. So this is kind of a long-term estimate of our cash balances as well. You can see we have built up our cash balances and are continuing to build those up over the next 2-year period. The pink line you see there, that's the required reserve levels that we have in place per covenants. We continue to outperform those. I think with our 2% forecast on occupation taxes, we have historically been able to achieve above that. So I think what you have before you is a pretty conservative forecast that I think will continue to hit what we need to in order to ensure that the JPA is on good financial footing through 2046 when those bonds are finally paid off.
Questions?
Nice play on words. The arena is on good footings.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, take a motion on this item?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, yes. Back it up.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. So, so your First payment comes due in January of 2020? Or
So
when are you going to pay it?
the debt payments, they occur twice a year, so we have a one-time principal and 2 times interest.
Okay. And when will you make that?
I can't remember the exact dates. I'd have to go back and look. I believe there's a June payment and then a December payment.
For which one?
So typically, the latter would include a principal and an interest payment, and the December would be an interest only.
Okay. And the first one was what month?
December.
December. That was interest. Then the other principal and interest is
June.
June. Okay. And where will that money come from?
It comes from the total overall revenues of the JPA, so that includes occupation taxes, the fees that are generated, the subsidies that we get from the federal government for the Build America bonds, the premium seat revenues, so it's the total overall revenues that come into the West Haymarket.
Okay. And expenses are come from the revenues or?
Yes, so going back to this chart here, you can see our budgeted revenues are about 35 million, expenditures of 30 million. So for the upcoming budget year, we're expecting a surplus of $5 million.
In 2020?
In 1920.
Okay. 35 million excess?
No, 5 million.
Okay. And I guess one of the notes that need to be made is that the city makes money off of managing this. That's another reason for handling the JPA.
Well, the city doesn't make any money off of this. We're reimbursing the city for staff time.
Yeah, right, which adds to the city budget.
Well, so when this started, there were staff needed to support the legal costs. There were staff needed to collect all of the occupation taxes that we're bringing in. So staff was added by the city specifically for the JPA. So we're just reimbursing that time. The city's not making any money off of this. It just comes into our overall general fund and then helps to fund the salaries of the people that are dedicating their time.
But it helps the budget, the city general fund.
I guess 400,000 in the scope of 170 million, some odd dollars.
Okay, well, even at that, in tough budget times, it adds to the city general fund, which needs help at this time.
But if we didn't have lawyers, we'd have to hire
1 minute.
somebody to do the work, right?
Yes. I mean, somebody would have to collect the taxes, set up some type of system to collect it. So all that was put in place originally by the city to do that. And I believe those systems, a lot of those collection systems were built in-house by the city.
Okay, it still adds to the general fund's balance.
All right, would anyone else like to speak to this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
So
Second.
All right, moved by Claire and seconded by Ward. Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire,
yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes.
Item number 8, WH 1925, resolution approving the West Haymarket JPA Capital Improvement Program.
Welcome back.
So I kind of highlighted some of the key capital improvement programs. I'm not going to probably walk through each of the individuals, but if there's questions on any of those, so a lot of them are kind of ongoing maintenance type. You can see our capital improvement program goes out to 2046, so considerable staff time was spent trying to look at the various things and replacement items that are going to impact the arena over the long term and try to plan for those so that we can continue to keep the arena updated and not have any deferred maintenance in that facility moving forward.
Any questions for Mr. Kaufman on that, on the capital improvement program? Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this item? If public comment is welcome now at this time.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. You said something about the LED lights.
Yes, there's a project that's been included in the CIP now for a couple years. It's in year 2020, the LED lighting for the Arena Bowl. So that's a planned replacement of the lights within the bowl of the arena and the control systems to control that.
Okay. And so is that outside or inside?
That's inside. So
Inside.
imagine if you're walking into the arena and it's everything where the sports and performances would take place.
Okay. Has nothing to do with the LED lights in the streets?
No.
Okay. And so all of this, there's still maintenance for the arena. And is that correct?
There will continue to be maintenance at the arena over the long term. I mean, that's what this is, a capital improvement plan. So basically it's planning out long term all of our major capital type expenditures in the facility until the end of the JPA in 2046.
So why can't, if the arena is making money, doesn't it pay its own bills and its own needs?
Well, the money, I think we've covered that, but the arena will continue to have operating or capital type expenditures that are going to be needed so that we don't have deferred maintenance on the facility long term.
Mm-hmm. So after 2045, who picks up their bills?
I think that's a question for a future governing body.
And probably the taxpayers.
I can't answer that question. I might be retired by 2045, but
Well, it's possible nobody that's here today will be there, but it seems like a difficult situation to set up because they become dependent on it, the arena does. And I think it's difficult to say they're self-supporting as long as there's all this help.
well, and I think there's been some action taken by this board to set up some endowment pieces to be able to fund some of the major capital improvement items. You know, that could also be a future action of setting up more money into a fund to set aside for capital improvements in the future. So I think we still have quite a bit of time till we address that, but it's something definitely that a future governing body could try to address.
Is that your recommendation?
I'm not making a recommendation for 2045, but
You're just throwing it out as an idea?
yeah, it's a concept.
Okay. And maybe the board would be wise to do that so taxpayers aren't stuck.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on the resolution for the capital improvement program of the JPA.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ward, seconded by Claire. Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird,
Yes.
Item number 9, the next meeting date is set for Thursday, September 26, 2019 at 2:30 PM in City County Building, Council Chambers.
Thank you. With that, I think we've come to the conclusion of our meeting. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Claire, second by Ward. Please call the roll.
Ward,
Yes.
Claire,
Yes.
Gaylor Baird.
Yes. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.